You are listening to Able Radio, simplifying productivity for small business owners everywhere. If you are looking for 1% improvements that add up to big results, this is the place for you. Every week, we learn about simple systems and tools that will help you build the business and life you've always wanted. Now here's your host, Zachary Sexton.
Is there a business idea that you've held on to for a bit too long? Maybe you've got some relationships that are holding you back from bigger things. Or perhaps there are a few physical items that need to be taken out of your office for good. In this case, you'll find out it's my bamboo tablet. Well, professional organizer Kathy Vines is here to teach us strategies needed to overcome purposeless practicality, sunk cost, fear of the future, and other mental pitfalls that can cloud your judgment. She's on to talk about how you can clear the clutter in your business, and she's also here to talk about her new book, Clever Girl's Guide to Living with Less. We'll jump right into the conversation where Kathy and I talk about why living with less might be a good thing.
You are listening to Able Radio, simplifying productivity for small business owners everywhere. If you are looking for 1% improvements that add up to big results, this is the place for you. Every week, we learn about simple systems and tools that will help you build the business and life you've always wanted. Now here's your host, Zachary Sexton.
Absolutely. So to start, you and I are in agreement. We're kind of minimalist folks, but the title says living with less. Maybe Can you explain to folks why that might be a good thing?
Sure. I think less applies to all sorts of different things in life, but not necessarily everything in life. So I'm not one of those people who thinks that you should only own 25 items, that if you haven't used a thing in the last 6 months, get rid of it. I'm someone who says the things that in your life should be serving you, that you should be holding on to things because they have a purpose in your life, whether that purpose is purely for fun and entertainment or because they do a thing. But the less part comes from all of the things around the stuff we value that get in our way. So it's around removing the clutter that helps us that blocks us from seeing what's important to us, that blocks us from getting to what we use and love the most. And some of the people who read my book, they're people who are planning to live with less because they're downsizing, right? It's really physically, I want to have less stuff. I'm going to live in a smaller space. I need less. Some people are just around the idea that the bulk of the items in their life, the overload, the overwhelm is really creating stress. And they understand that living with less helps them get past the overwhelm. But the people who read my book are probably the ones who haven't quite figured out how to do it yet. They just get blocked and they don't know how to live with less. They just know they want to.
And out of all of them, you talk about 8. What do you think the biggest block is?
I think the one I hear about the most is what I call future fear, which is I might need this someday. It can be paralyzing, and it can be the reason why somebody can just hold on to a thing or hold on to an idea and just say, well, I can't, what if I need this someday? I will tell you, when I work with people around that concept, I do a couple of things. The first is talk about what the word need really means, and have they artificially created a need? Or are they just imagining a time in the future in which this thing could be used and fill a gap? And I think even when you talk about need and you whittle that one down to necessity versus convenience, I think that helps break that one apart. But I would say I might need it someday. It comes up when you're dealing with papers. Paperwork is awful, right? That's the biggest villain. It comes up for things like entertaining items in your home, your clothes, different books or things you have for sporting goods. You can always look at things and say, oh, well, yeah, but I might need this someday. And then there it sits because it's not a stronger force than letting go of it at the time.
You have a good way of reframing this that I like in your book. It's moving from status quo, like, why should I let this go? It might serve a purpose to more purposeful possession. So looking at something and be like, okay, I've got this external hard drive right here. Why should I keep it? So, well, it's got actually some good videos on there that I'm planning on editing. Okay, I'm going to keep it. Versus like, it's still good. I think it works. I haven't used it in 7 years. So that little reframe really helped me out. Is there any other strategies that you use to help people overcome a little bit of that fear of the future? Because that's the most common thing actually I see when it comes to digital organization. People just keep so much because, maybe I might need it. It's like, Google, Google.
Right.
Google
Absolutely. Right. And it's, I love that you picked up on the status quo possession versus purposeful possession. And for me, status quo possession is I only get rid of something when I have a reason to, right? So thinking about digital stuff, you could go through that bin of chargers and cords in your office and say, all right, this is a BlackBerry charger. I don't have a BlackBerry anymore. I can get rid of that.
That's
what
so
you
funny.
Might not do,
I'm on my list. I was like, because I'm pretty good. I like to purge on a regular basis, but the one thing is adapters. So I put a note in there like that's one. I was just like, why do I have this ball of stuff?
And you might say, oh, the BlackBerry, I don't have a BlackBerry anymore. I can get rid of that charger. Oh, but an iPhone 6. Oh, this works for iPhone 6s. Oh, so this still works. It's okay that I have 7 of them because, they're still good. They'll still work. And so that's where the status quo possession can kind of get in your way. Status quo possession is saying, I'm going to hold on to things unless I have a good reason not to. All right, I don't use this technology more. I can get rid of it. Purposeful possession would reverse that and say, I'm only going to hold on to the things that I do truly need. So I have 7 chargers that do still currently work. But can I imagine a world in which I'd ever really need more than 3? And I'm being generous with 3. That's assuming, 1 for the car, 1 for the house, 1 for travel, just in case. And so the purposeful says, how do I turn it on its end and saying, what do I need to keep? Why am I keeping this? As opposed to, do I have a good reason to get rid of it?
Absolutely. Okay. So it's the USB chargers for me because many things have the micro or the regular USB. I was like, wow, I can charge my Kindle with this 8 different ways.
Exactly.
All right. Well,
not including the way you are already using something to charge your Kindle.
Okay. To read your book. Point taken. Point taken. What about this in the non-physical realm? I mean, we're kind of talking about digital, but I still kind of think of paperwork and reference material as somewhat of a thing. But I'm almost wanting to go to like an idea that I might need this someday. And the reason when you proposed doing the podcast like this, I was so keen is because I'm making a change in my business. I was working very local in Austin, Texas, and I'm shifting to more international or all throughout the United States and more of an online presence. And in order to do that, I needed to clear up some space, some mental bandwidth. And one of the things I needed to let go was a networking group that I like, that I'm getting clients from, that I enjoy the people that I work with, but was taking a lot of bandwidth. And when I, kind of crunched the numbers, it wasn't quite where I wanted it to be. But I held on for a while for a few of these reasons, and we could maybe get into a couple of them, but I think it was the future fear, like, I might need this someday. Like this, it's good. It's kind of working right now. Why should I let it go?
I think that's a really practical question that lots of us who are small business owners and entrepreneurs struggle with all the time. We grow our business, and what we thought our business was going to be like in year 1 or year 2 or year 5, suddenly 3, 4, 10 years later, it doesn't look like that anymore. Yet we're still maybe holding on to investments or relationships or ideas from the past when we had a different vision of what our future was going to be. I think about that when I think of the "But This Is Still Good" chapter in my book, Purposeless Practicality, and I talk about one of the ideas is often things that we have that we struggle with letting go of is because it's attached to either a vision we had of ourselves in the past, like it's attached to what we used to be, or was a vision for our future of what we thought we could be or what we might be. We've all done things like that. We've spent small amounts of money to large amounts of money to say, oh, this will be good. Yeah, this is definitely where I'm going to go in my future, and this is a good investment. And you think about something like a networking group or a referral group or some other kind of financial relationship with people, and you say, this absolutely served me at a time, but unless I take a step back and analyze where I am today and where my likely future is going, I might not understand that the ROI for that investment has diminished. Mm-hmm. And looking at a historical ROI is interesting, but if it's not aligned with your future, it's irrelevant because it's going to be the time and the money and the energy, which are your three most valuable resources you have to invest as a business owner, to say, I'm staying committed to only the things that do serve my current vision of the future, not just things that were helpful for me to get to where I am today. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
When you talk about money, it does.
Yeah.
When you talk about money, sunk cost is a big one, and that's another thing you bring up in your book. Yeah. When it comes to the physical world, like, okay, I bought this Bowflex, and now it's just collecting dust, or I'm using it to hang my clothes on.
Absolutely, it's great drawing
But
rack.
in business, there's a lot of times you get really excited about an idea, and you invest in a piece of technology or invest in a system. I can think back a number of years ago, my dad invested quite a bit of money in a business opportunity that I actually think would have been a really good fit for him. And when he got everything up and running, I believe it was August of 2008. Then September happened, and November. Yeah. So it was just a terrible time for the type of business it was in. It was a recruiting firm, and nobody was leaving jobs, nobody was hiring. So it was just like, did not. And so he had this sunk cost. He pushed through for a while, but I think he recognized, okay, this isn't going to be the thing that's going to make the most sense right now. And he was able to overcome that. Boy, like, I paid good money for this. How do you overcome that? And that's an emotionally tough one.
It really is. When I think about, and I talk about this in the book, the internal voice that goes in your head when you say, I paid good money for this, it's current day you facing the version of you that was there the day you made the decision to pull the trigger on whatever it is that you invested in. And at the time you said, oh, this is going to be great. You're not going to regret this. This is worth the money. Maybe it was a splurge. Maybe it was outside your budget. So later on, when it comes time to look at it critically and you know it's not serving you, but the only reason you're holding on to it is because of that decision you made and you invested good money in it, that becomes a barrier. And, it's have you heard the phrase escalation of commitment to a failing course of action, where you just keep putting in more and more into something that isn't working? Sometimes that's one of those ways in which a sunk cost fallacy can really continue to drain us. I think about, especially as a business owner, there have been systems that I've invested in that not only money, but time to set it up. And then they just didn't really take, like I just wasn't in love with it. And I found myself going back to the old workarounds that I thought having a system was going to do for me. I think getting involved with potential customers and leads that I thought would develop into something. And I spent a lot of time cultivating things that really didn't pay out, but kept thinking, oh, well, one more phone call, one more freebie, one more something, and this will turn into something. And really, a lot of that is because, well, I've invested so much in trying to develop this already. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's just around the corner, right? It's just about to turn. It never turns. I think there's a big
or if it does, was it worth it?
Right. And right. So even when it does, when it does pay off, you're like, oh, great, I got $1,000 for something that cost me $3,000 in opportunity cost or something else like that. And saying, yeah, just because I finally checked that box doesn't mean it was a worthwhile investment, again, of my time, my energy, my money.
How do you step back and check yourself? Maybe you can give a specific example with a system, or I'm sure you can think of a client example, and walk through this, because I'm sure in the moment you, just as well as I was an economics major, and the sunk cost fallacy was like beat into my brain, so I know it. I'm aware of it. But when it's there, do you have any any ways of pulling back and being a little bit more rational with your decision making?
I try. One of the things that I'm pretty good at is before I make an investment, before I take on a project, I outline what my expected outcome is. So I know going into it, how will I measure that it's successful? And when do I need it to be successful by? And success might be different, So I tried a version of a CRM that I kind of monkeyed together myself that was fine and good. And it only worked when I said, oh yeah, I got to go put this in that system. It didn't serve me in any other way, but I had kind of said, all right, I'm going to try this for a year. And if at the end of the year it isn't second nature to me and it only feels like a task and I'm not getting any value out of it, I'm done. I'm moving on. And I remember I worked in my corporate world. I was in human resources for 20 years before starting my business 5 years ago. And I worked at a company where we were very, very critical about you have to say no to things that aren't going to work as soon as possible once you know you're on that precipice, because everything after that is a wasted investment.
That's a good mindset. Quit fast.
Yeah.
If you as soon as you recognize. Are there some good indicators that you use to know when that recognition's about to happen, or keeping it aware? Like just like with the CRM example, how did you start to know that this is more of a drain than a something that's bringing me up?
A couple of things. I felt like I had to over-engineer what was meant to be something simple. So, okay, I was working harder to make the simple happen. I knew that for me is a trigger. I think when I would resent having to spend time in the system, even though it was supposed to be serving me, right? Like it's there to be my tool, not me to be a slave to it. Like I think that was an emotional trigger for me when I realized that I was just going through those motions because it was a necessary evil, because I had said that this thing was important. When it wasn't something that I felt connected to and finding the value in it each time I did it, that's when I knew this wasn't working. And it wasn't that I didn't think a CRM was valuable. I knew it was. I just knew that this system as designed wasn't working for me anymore.
Something I got from your book.
I'll say,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'll say I made the decision to do this system when my business was much, much smaller. And I think that that's what I found was it didn't scale. So my business grew. And my system and my choices made sense for that vision of who I was. 2 years ago, this was great. Now, oh my gosh, this is horrible. All right, that's my trigger to know it's time for me to grow. And I'm not growing with this system. I need to grow with something new that already recognizes where I am today.
Perfect. It's something I got from your book. It's just a little quote that I think adds to your point is, if I went shopping today, would I buy it?
Yes.
Right? So the person you are today, the business owner you are today, wouldn't necessarily invest in that CRM. Person 2 years ago, you could. So just, all right, that's fine. That's
Exactly. And it's not that I necessarily look back at the choice and saying I made a bad choice. It was, I don't need to keep sticking with the good choice I made 2 years ago because it's not the good choice I would make today.
I like it. My one example that I have bulleted out was sunk cost, and Nikita will tease me about this. My fiance will tease me about this. Is I bought, when I was extremely broke, a bamboo tablet. It was one of those ones where you're supposed to write online. I just thought I was going to create these teaching YouTube videos. It was going to be awesome. First time I got it out of I opened it. It looked really cool, and I started writing with it. And I don't know if the technology's, I'm sure it's improved, but it just wasn't, I couldn't make it work. It was, my writing was completely illegible, and I don't think I ever picked it up again. But I moved that bamboo tablet with me like 5 times, and I kept on saying I was going to use it. And then at some point, because I think it was probably about $100. I don't remember exactly what it was. Then at some point, it's like, okay, I'm not going to use this. Okay, sunk cost fallacy. I know this, Zach. But then it's like, I need to recoup this investment. It was a poor choice. I need to sell it to some other schmuck or somebody who's more talented than me with the bamboo board. And then it continued to follow me to another like state.
Yeah. And I talk about recouping cost as one of the other barriers in the book. And that idea of exactly what you just said. So not only do I think I can do something with it and somebody will pay good money. So you've got that mindset, but then and I'm going to continue to invest one way or another in holding on to it until that happens. So carrying cost, I have to maintain it. I have to store it. And then okay, I'm going to recoup the cost. Is there still a market for that? Is anybody actually, just because you paid $100 for it a while ago doesn't mean somebody else is going to pay $10 for it now. Do you know where to find that market? Do you really want to go through the hassle of all of that? Or is it worth just, putting it in the donation box and saying, best of luck to you, next person who thinks you're going to fall in love with this tablet? I think recouping costs is where people start to get into, they connect with their inner negotiator and the idea they're like, well, yes, I spent money on it, but there may be still something in it for me if I can let go of it the right way. And we're willing to hold on to things for a long time until we find that ideal connection that somebody else will take it off our hands, even if that never comes.
And remind me of the cost of that holding on. I know, because whenever I looked at it, I was kind of annoyed with myself. I'm like, man, Zach, why did you buy that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's tangible cost, right? Think about this if you run a business, right? You have a product that you started a long time ago that didn't really sell, but you're still carrying the inventory, and you still have a closet full of those things that you didn't sell, or they were a giveaway you did for something, but you invested in it, and you said, all right, well, I'm still going to recoup the cost someday, and yet I'm paying for square footage to store it, right? So there's that kind of a negative cost to that fallacy. The other side is the emotional part, and I think when you hold on to something that you've already decided in your mind, I'm going to let go of, like I'm willing to let go of it, but for getting some money for it, now it's invading your space, right? You've already made the decision that you don't want it, but now it's an invader. Now it's a little bit of a barnacle on your valuable life and your valuable things. And so when you look at it, you do say, oh, that thing, oh yeah, I really got to deal with that. Ugh, I can't believe I wasted $100 on that thing when what would have $100 have done for me at that time in my life? All of that negative feelings about yourself, about your decision making, about your wasted opportunities, the things that could have been. I think that all gets tied in. When I talk about helping people with their relationship with their stuff, that's what I'm talking about, is the emotions that come up when you look at a thing that aren't just about, hey, gee, that's a perfectly good tablet. Why don't I start using it tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, that energy piece is so big, because if you are wasting mental energy being annoyed, you're taking away from mental energy, potentially creating a new product or serving a new customer, or
exactly
creating a new marketing strategy. There's all these different areas that could have your time and your attention and your energy and your money that you're stuck in the past a little bit. So we talked about the future fear, like stuck in the future, then it's being stuck in the past as well. They both can fit. And
I do think as business owners, that's how we grow, right? As we continuously prune. We have to prune. We like a bush that only grows because you cut back the areas that aren't going to, and it's the only way you get the growth that goes. And so it's not only about cutting things back, but it's knowing what strategically to cut back to make sure you're propagating growth in the right areas.
You said about 5 years in business. You had a 20-year career in HR. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your transition, and then maybe some of the pruning that you've done along the way.
That's good. So I was in human resources for 20 years, and pretty much at 3 major companies in different industries during that time. I was great at it, and it was something that I thought, when I was in high school, I said, oh, I'm going to be in HR like this, even though it wasn't called HR then, but this is what I was going to do. Personnel. Personnel. Yeah.
What made you so attracted to personnel?
I remember I was having a conversation with my uncle, who was a big deal engineer at IBM, and we were out at a brunch, and he talked about, I knew I liked psychology, and I wanted to go into psychology because I really enjoyed understanding what motivated people to do things and what stopped people from doing things, right? So the positive and negative around why people choose to do what they do. I said, but I also like the idea of working in a company. And he said, well, there's industrial psychology. I said, industrial psychology? What is that? And he said, well, it's things like people who work in a factory and they'll change the lighting to different tones in order to see if they can get more productivity out of the workers on the factory floor. And I was like, this is a thing. I could do this. And I just started learning about industrial psychology from then. And my plan was that I was going to get a master's degree in industrial psychology after I finished my undergrad at Bucknell. But instead, what I got kind of distracted by along the way is the idea of getting an MBA, because I felt like but I had and wanted my business competencies and my ability to work with others to really show up a lot more on the business side, not on the psychology side. So I went on and got my MBA, and then 20 years in human resources from there. And then I was laid off 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. And, being the HR person, I knew it was coming because I'm the HR person doing the layoffs.
You didn't have to fire yourself, did you?
I did.
Oh, no.
And it was, hey, but it was, what, by the time it came around, honestly, it was one of those places where this is a great example of I didn't say no early enough. I felt guilt to my colleagues and coworkers that they were about to go through such an awful period at work, and I didn't want to leave them behind. I felt indebted and guilty to them. So I didn't say no and do the right thing for myself.
And being sentimental about it was another point you brought up in your book.
Yes.
Which I didn't think we could tie into business, but we were talking before we started recording, and it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, you really can.
Yeah, I think those emotional connections that we make to people, to ideas, those can be anchors more, and anchors not in ways that serve us more than our ability to think clearly about the practicality of an idea or the practicality of an investment. So I had this opportunity to think about what I wanted to do next. And, after 20 years in human resources, I said, do I really have a 21st in me? And I knew at the time I didn't. And what I'd been able to do over the previous, 5 to 8 years was really just become so much more of a coach. I become a certified coach. I was working with managers and executives. And what I felt was I was a lot more in tune with developing improvement and one-on-one relationships rather than working on the agenda of a company. And recognize that inside myself, that was what really made me happy and that I was good at it. And there was a marketplace for it, right? It's got to be all three. It's got to be skills and value and happiness. It's got to be all three in order for it to be a viable passion to go forward. That's when I said, this is becoming an organizer and working with productivity is something I kind of thought was my someday maybe career, and maybe now is someday. So I gambled and got the full support of my husband, who thought it was fantastic, and said, let's try it for try it for 6 months, try it for a year, see what happens. And this is, again, another example where I said from the beginning, what do I need to know that this is going to be successful? How am I going to measure at month 6? How am I going to measure at month 12 that this is still the right path for me? And, I know that the first 6 months were about getting to year 1. And then year 1 was about getting to year 2, and year 2 was about getting to year 5. Like, I was all in by the end of year 2 and knew that this was the right path. Even though my business has evolved quite a bit in the last 3 years, since that kind of, I'm on this path. Even though it's evolved a lot, I didn't know 5 years ago I was writing a book. I didn't know 2 years I was writing a book. And yet I've allowed myself to stay open to opportunities that reflect my interests, my talents, and the marketplace at the time.
What was the thing that happened between year 1 and year 2 that really felt like opened up a lot of opportunities for you?
I think I started to get some speaking engagements, and I found that I had things to say to people that resonated with crowds, and I could get immediate real-time feedback that what I was saying not only made sense to people and seemed valuable to them, but it seemed to be things they hadn't heard before. So I was getting that notoriety and really that rebuilding of my own confidence, saying, oh yeah, I've got some value here. I have a voice. I was a heavy blogger early on. I think that's what eventually spurred me into writing my book, and started getting a lot more feedback about the blog posts that I was writing. And ironically, both speaking and blogging has nothing to do with me being in somebody's house helping them with their stuff, right? Which of course what was paying the bills. But it's what helped me see this is a longer term trajectory. This is a lot more about how do I bring the ideas and the voice that's inside me over a decade, over longevity, and how does that evolve? Not just, cleaning one basement, one pantry at a time.
Mm-hmm. Well, it gives the opportunity for people to get to know it, just like this interview right here.
Exactly,
people are going to listen and get to know you, and and think, man, okay, I've got that the dirty basement. Maybe I should give Kathy a call, because you do virtual as well as in
I
person.
do. I do. I was thinking about that when you were talking about you expanding your business to going more international, and how do you kind of look at what you do and how you do it when your marketplace changes a little bit. And for me, it was about 3 years ago when I kept hearing from more and more people, oh, I wish you lived nearby. I wish you lived closer to me. You are the perfect person. You totally get me. I wish you lived closer. And I only had to hear it, a dozen times to say, all right, I got to figure this out. And that's when I launched my virtual organizing business, where I work with people through Skype or FaceTime or whatever their technology is of choice. And we go through, what are they trying to achieve? How are we going to break it down week by week? And how do I help them not only guide them in terms of what to do and how to do it, but accountability, support, keeping them kind of managed from a project management point of view. I'm a real systems and project management kind of person, so that's second nature to me. But I think people found it was a great way to get access to the person who they'd come to know through speaking and through videos and through my blogging, and they felt a certain amount of comfort with. And then we're able to say, I'm going to get that in my home, as long as the person on the other side of the screen for me has a little bit of a DIY aspect to them, and they are disciplined enough to do the homework in between sessions. We've had tremendous success with people. I work with people all over the world.
That's exactly what I was finding for myself. I got inspired through this entrepreneurial weekend at the beginning of August to just experiment, throw out something called a virtual clean slate. So I've been working with people locally all day. They come to my home office, and we do a mind sweep. We get everything out of their head, and then we start to organize it and prioritize it and put it into a dashboard, so they can build one dashboard for them to work off of. And it was going really well. And I was like, I think I could do this online. So just through the same ways, video conferencing, we're organizing a lot of the work in Trello. We've got a Facebook group, and I noticed the people who are signing up for that. And by the way, this podcast is going out Wednesday. I think there's 5 more spots. I don't know. Oh, 5 more spots as of Monday, Eclipse Day, which we're really excited about. So we got to get off this call so we can go see the eclipse. And the folks that were coming from Germany and from Australia and they were all just like online business owners and people who are following me, listening to the podcast. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a whole new world, and I think we can all support each other through this. And one of the things that I thought I needed in my business was physical relationships. And what I've found is, like, we've done a couple virtual coffees before, is that I can get that intimacy with people via video conferencing very easily. Of course, going out and meeting in person is always going to be great, and I could do that at conferences or when like if I go visit Massachusetts or you come to visit Texas, of course we're gonna see each other. But yeah, that was a big realization for me, is that the tools that are there are so capable of forming intimacy, forming change, creating new systems, creating new habits when it comes to interacting and coaching and working with other people.
I love that. I think I've been doing Clever Girl organizing challenges the last few years, and this was the first year that I moved to a purely paid membership model. But in the past it had been free, and I did a Facebook group, and last year I had 800 people in it, and it was all free, but I felt the need to connect with people one-on-one. It's really hard to do that with 800 people. Mm-hmm. So I said, this isn't working for me anymore. I moved to a paid membership. I capped how many people are in it. It's a year-long challenge. And now we all develop relationships, and it's not just about them getting things from me. It's about them getting things from each other. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter, again, that they're from all over the world. And I think it's been...
I'm going to have to, after we get off the air, I'm going to have to get some tips, because that's the thing I'm so excited about is, okay, we've got 15 people. We're all have the same goal of getting this dashboard, which actually I was seeing if there's ways to dovetail that idea into mine, because a big area where people get attached to ideas. In fact, somebody who's already in the course was emailing me earlier, and it was saying, I've got 40. Well, he didn't know how many projects he had, so I asked him to write them all down, and it was over 40 of them. So it's like, okay, how can we get this down? What are some strategies we can do to get it down? And I gave him a couple of strategies that will be in the course if you want to know about it. But there was so many underlying psychological reasons. I think he felt the need. It's just like fear of missing out, the sunk cost, some of the projects happened to have to do with his brother and his family. So there was a little bit, I can't say that word very well, sentimentality. There was an emotional piece to it, feelings, the gushy stuff. Yeah. Or there was like a perceived value for somebody else. Another point you talk about, and kind of just being able to see that all in one place is what has allowed me to recognize what to drop. Because I didn't have I wouldn't have had any awareness on that if I didn't have it in a place where I could see.
I know your mind sweep exercise and doing the brain dump. I've done it. I've done it with you in person, and I've done it online with your through your podcast. And I think that's been the difference for me between get the landscape and then identify the focus. So for me, I use that exercise to get the landscape. What is everything out there? Mm-hmm. Because, getting things done, and David Allen, if it's out there and nagging, if I don't have it written down, it's going to kill me and wake me up 6 times in the middle of the night. But then that says, okay, now that it's all on paper, how am I going to focus? And so how would I get from 40 down to 4, I think is a big part of that process. And just saying, I need the landscape before I can focus. I'm not one who can just start with a point and then expand.
Yeah. There's a different strategy. So David Allen getting things done is I think a big influence for both of us, and it's a bottom-up approach. It's get everything out and then mix it all up. And that approach works best for me. Then there's the Stephen Covey top-down. It's begin with the end in mind, and like think of yourself, somebody giving your eulogy. What do you want? I think that's helpful too. I just want control over my current world first before I start thinking about my deathbed.
Yeah, and it's funny. I just talking about it, I realized that one of the strategies that I talk about in my book is called the EASY method, EEEEZ, which stands for, which is when you're going through a physical organizing project, going through the whole set of an item. So E stands for excavate, then evaluate, then edit, then establish zones. So EEEEZ. And for me, that's a bottoms up approach. It's let's gather everything and then make some criteria and then apply the criteria and then implement the final plan.
Definitely. I like
I never thought of those two being so related. Thanks for that.
Well, good segue. And the last couple questions, because again, we need to go watch the eclipse. I think you know them, but 2 questions. I'm trying to get an archive of a bunch of smart folks about their most influential book and why, and a favorite productivity tool or resource. So what are yours?
Okay. All right. My book is called Difficult Conversations. I think the subtitle is How to Talk About the Stuff That Really Matters by Sheila Heen and Doug Stone. They're out of the Harvard Negotiation Project. And this book probably came out maybe 15 years ago. I'm not sure. And the reason I think of it as a productivity book is because so often what gets in our way is difficult relationships with people, conflict, things we're trying to avoid when it comes with interpersonal relationships. And this was a life-changing book for me around really thinking differently about how I interacted with people, what I bring to conversations, how I deal with conflict. And it's one of probably my most recommended books to people.
Perfect.
I don't think you've gotten that one before.
No.
The tool, it would be hard for me to choose between AnyDo and Evernote. I use them both every day. And I will tell you what I like about both. The same thing I like about both of them is, and similar to what I was just talking about, it allows me to capture everything in a really simple way. And I only have to drill down when I care about it. So I don't have to over-engineer the process to get to the point of finite details if I don't feel like it for everything.
Both wonderful. Kathy, good. If people want to find out more, obviously we'll put the book, your blog, all your socials in the show notes, but is there a way where people can reach out and thank you?
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to find me is on my website, which is www.clevergirlorganizing.com. And I'm on Facebook at Clever Girl Organizing. I'm on Twitter, CleverGirlOrg. And Instagram, I think Clever Girl Organizing. So any of those places will find me.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed that episode with Miss Kathy Vine. So start decluttering your business right now. And if you want some help around the house, I'd encourage you to check out her book on Amazon. I made sure to put that in the show notes. And as of the recording of this outro, there are 3 spots left for this fall's Clean Slate group coaching. So if you want a complete dashboard of all of your work and you want to join 15 other entrepreneurs starting Monday, September 11th to learn how to externalize, visualize, organize, and optimize your work. Go to zacharysexton.com/clean slate while supplies last. Thanks again. I'll see you next Productive Wednesday.